Have you ever wondered what it's like to be the play-by-play broadcaster of a Big Ten football game, or how a national broadcaster views Ohio State's win during week 1 of the season? We dive into both topics today on Locked On Buckeyes.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeyes fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is a Wednesday, September 6th in the year 2023, and I'd like to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. During today's episode, for the first time, and hopefully not the last, Mr. Noah Eagle of NBC Sports joins the show. Noah is the play-by-play broadcaster for Big Ten football games on NBC. He will also call Big Ten basketball games on NBC as well. Noah and I dive into what it means for him to be the play-by-play broadcaster for Big Ten games on NBC this season. Also, how he views the Buckeyes win over Indiana in Big Ten stadiums he is looking forward to going to for the first time. I have been looking forward to this conversation and having Noah on the show for quite a long time. So let's back away and bring Noah in. And joining us now here on Locked On Buckeyes is a person that I planned on having on a show when he had his previous job working with the LA Clippers, but it's Noah Eagle. He is the voice of the Big Ten on NBC. Noah, welcome to the show.
Jay, I appreciate you having me, man. This is exciting. This is an exciting time in Big Ten football, basketball, and everything in between. So excited to be here and pumped up to talk to you.
You know, I wasn't expecting to hear your voice the week 0 game, Notre Dame and Navy over in Dublin, but here we are. I turn on my TV on NBC and there's an eagle on the broadcast, not Ian, but it's you, Noah. What did that mean to you to be the first voice that we heard when the season got kicked off?
Yeah, Jay, I didn't expect to hear my voice either. I got a late call for that game. So I was in LA doing Chargers preseason and I was still over there and was going to go with the team then that week to San Francisco for their third game. And I got a call on Monday that they needed me to fly to Dublin on Tuesday. So it was a crazy 24 hours where I had to go and buy a suit jacket and shirt and tie to make sure I was presentable to call the game. But incredible experience. And as you mentioned, to be the first game of the year, not just week 0, but the first game in week 0 that everybody sees to really initiate the college football season. That's special and a moment that I'll never forget. The trip overall is a trip I'll never forget. The people in Ireland were spectacular. The energy there was off the charts, and Notre Dame looked pretty good. I'll tell you that much. They look pretty good. I know the Buckeyes have that big time meeting week 4, which we'll be there for. So we're excited for that.
Yeah, it's exciting time. And you mentioned the week 4 matchup, but also like having Notre Dame being the first game as well. Like that means something. I know a lot of Buckeye fans will not care for Notre Dame, so I'm going to realize that before I make this statement. To a lot of college football fans out there, Notre Dame means something. You may not like them, you may love them, whatever it is. It means something. When Notre Dame's on TV, there's a good chance that if your team's not playing, you're going to watch that game. So for it to be the week 0 game, first game of the season, but also for it to be Notre Dame, did that mean something even more to you in that moment?
Yeah, to a certain degree, for sure, because I grew up with a lot of people that were Notre Dame fans, and you see the passion that comes through week in and week out. That is to your point, appointment television, not just for them, but for the entire college football world. They have their own package. They're the only team in all of college football, essentially, that has that. And so to be a part of it, and a small part of it, that's something you dream of as a kid wanting to be a broadcaster, because you park yourself on a Saturday and watch. I remember that Manti Te'o season like it was yesterday, 2012, where every single week I was saying, okay, what time is Notre Dame playing? I got to see if they can keep this up. I got to see what Manti Te'o is doing. I mean, you could go Brady Quinn, you could go obviously much further than that, but the rich history of that program, it's felt when you're around it. We were at practice. We talked to Marcus Freeman and talked to a couple of the players, Sam Hartman, just his experience so far, you can tell it's different. And so what I'm excited about, and we were talking about before we started this, was for me, I haven't been to a lot of the environments of college football greatness and history. And so to now be a part of that and to at least just feel like I can say I experienced it firsthand, that's what makes college football different and unique. That's what makes it so amazing for all of us to tune into. So Notre Dame, they're right at the top of that list. That pageantry is off the charts.
Where have you been in college football to call games or maybe even just be a fan?
Yeah, well, Penn State
Yeah.
did that this past week and did it at the very end of last season. In terms of just Big Ten, I've done a game in Iowa, which was amazing. Kinnick is unbelievable. Nebraska, that's incredible as well. No matter how the team is, they're going to sell out. Rutgers I've done, and we're Maryland, which we have actually week 2. So I've been around a little bit, but bouncing around the Big Ten current and then future, I should say, with USC and UCLA. Haven't been to Oregon, haven't been to Washington. I've heard both of those are amazing. I've been to Columbus to do basketball, but I haven't been to Columbus to do football. So that's going to be a major bucket list item for me this year. Never been to Ann Arbor, never been to Madison. So just in the Big Ten, it's massive. I have done some SEC, and so I got to experience that. I did Georgia at Auburn 2 years ago, the year they won their first title, the Bulldogs, and that was amazing. And then I did 2 games at Arkansas. Auburn traveled there, and that was the energy it's different for sure. And then Missouri, Arkansas, similar to my Penn State experience last year, was Thanksgiving. And so it wasn't quite what you would normally get out of a college football Saturday, and it was a Friday. But all this to say, I have had a chance to feel some pretty cool environments, not just in college, but then NFL. But I'm excited for those trips to Columbus, to Madison, to Ann Arbor, because that's different. It's a different level. And then even week 4, that trip to South Bend, I did Notre Dame in Dublin. I didn't get to do that at Notre Dame. So to be there and see the history with your own eyes, that's going to be something that I'll check off my list really forever.
So I thought, and this may be just me being naive about how these things work, I assumed that would have been a Notre Dame broadcast. Is that an NBC Big Ten crew that'll be there?
It is, yeah. So Ohio State got the precedence on it, and it'll be a Big Ten Saturday night at South Bend at Notre Dame. So NBC is going to be doing the broadcast regardless, right? And Notre Dame has USC later this year. That's a Notre Dame broadcast. But in this case, with Ohio State being involved, it fell to that jurisdiction.
Nice. That's going to be a little bit more exciting for me. I assumed that it would be Notre Dame heavy, but with the Big Ten crew being there and that Big Ten, not just broadcast crew you're part of, but also the studio crew, that's going to be a lot. That's going to be more of a Big Ten feel to me, because I, in my head, was like, oh, I got to get ready for a Notre Dame broadcast. It's going to be great no matter what, but the Big Ten feel does hit different for me and a lot of people listening to this show. So you guys are doing a great job. And you mentioned you've been to Columbus.
Yeah,
I have been to Columbus for a few basketball games, a few football games. That football environment is different. And so I think later in the season, I think in November, I think Michigan State comes, if I remember that correctly. Michigan State.
Listen, I'll be honest with you, Jay. I am not even looking to. I know we get there eventually. I'm pretty positive we get there eventually. That's all I care about right now.
Yeah.
What I care about at this very moment is making sure I know about Maryland and Charlotte for this week. Yeah.
How do you prepare for different games? Because I know you've been doing basketball for a while. How do you prepare for each week a different opponent, a different place you're going for the first time?
Yeah, that is definitely something that needs to be addressed. The more you go through it and the more you do it, the easier it gets, because you understand what you need and maybe what you don't need. And I think when I was first calling football games, I was doing a lot of stuff that I didn't need to do, and I wasn't doing as much stuff that I did need to do in terms of the preparation ahead of time. Now, as I've gotten along, and now I'm year 3 into doing college football, and I have an unbelievable support staff around me with Todd Blackledge, who's an encyclopedia of college football, Catherine Tappan, who comes ready with 15 different stories that she has on players and coaches and background, and it's amazing. And my producer, Matt Marvin, director, Charlie Danmeyer, they come with great infrastructure. So it makes my life very easy, but I still have to prepare and I still have to put in the hours. And so for me, that requires a lot of reading articles and interviews, anything else, watching videos. The one that we're still early in the season. So the one good thing for me is that a lot of those off-season storylines still pertain here. It's not like it's week 12 and I can say, well, they went to the transfer portal and got this guy. that's not going to happen week 12. But week 2, it's still pertinent. And so NBC, we all went to Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis and had these interviews with coaches and players. And that type of stuff helps me a lot. It's personality stuff. It's background on these guys. There's questions about why they chose the school they're at, things of that nature. So that stuff's really good. And then it's about stats and making sure that I'm up to speed on, okay, this person did this last year. What are they expected to do this year? And as the season goes on, that kind of shifts from all the storylines to more of the season stuff. And then if something's happened, making sure I'm on top of that. We get to talk to coaches, the head coach, both coordinators, and then we get to talk to a handful of players each week. That stuff's really important to me because that's really, I'd say, where I gain the most knowledge on the teams. And by the time I'm done with all of it and I have all these crazy amounts of notes and everything scattered around the booth, I have some weird mad scientist method that I can compartmentalize all of it and know exactly where it is and then regurgitate it so that the audience can digest it.
That sounds like a gift. We'll tap into that gift, hear more about that, and dive into Noah Eagle discussing Buckeye football and what it's going to mean more to call those games in the future next on Locked on Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back, because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. One thing that I do believe, Noah, with you and your experience of just calling just games in general, not just football, but just sporting events in general, is that there's an excitement and there's a feeling of somewhat like a fan still, I would think, when you're in these moments, but also being able to I can't say the word, compartmentalize, there we go, those notes into being able to focus in the moment. Do you ever have like a moment where you kind of have become a fan while calling a game?
Yeah, well, I think that it'd be wrong to just completely eliminate that from who you are. To me, the best broadcasters, I have Mike Tirico now as a teammate at NBC. And I think that Mike is among the best at making you feel like he's excited to be there. And you want to know why? Because he is excited to be there. He's genuinely happy and thrilled. He just did the Michigan game week 1 on Peacock. There are not many number one broadcasters in this business that are willing to do a game outside their package when they have 2 games the following week on a streaming platform. And I think that says a lot about who Mike is as a person. And I think that's where I, envision myself as well in just being excited to be there, because the sports fan in me loves the aspects of, that's why I got into this. And I'm sure that's why all of us do what we do and put up with the weird hours or dates or anything in between of just understanding. But then I get to be at this amazing environment. I got to call the Vikings-Colts game last year, which was the largest comeback in NFL history. It's a game and a moment that'll live with me forever. The moment of being there and experiencing the fan base together, recognizing how special that day was, and then to watch it back on the quarterback show on Netflix, and you see Kirk Cousins bring his son to the locker room, and you realize that these guys are humans too. And at the core, they're sports fans, and they know just how special what they're doing is. So I think that as long as you can keep that in the forefront of your mind, you're good. Now, you can't go too far in that direction. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it'd be unprofessional. So there's a balance there. And similar to the preparation, I think the more reps you get of doing these games and being put in the environments, the easier it gets to recognize pretty quickly, okay, what does this moment call for, and what does a viewer really want out of me? And that's really the goal at the end of the day.
No, I'm looking at the Buckeye schedule, and I'm not trying to say let's look ahead to these games here, but you have Michigan State November 11th, going backwards or forwards. Right now it says Buckeyes going to Madison, Wisconsin on the 28th of October. And then we mentioned earlier a few times the Notre Dame Ohio State game, week 4 of the season. You just mentioned that you've done NFL games. Those are adults, professionals. They make a lot of money. It's a lot different when you're doing games when there's 18 to 22, maybe 23-year-old young men playing the football. Do you approach storylines different based off the age of the athletes that are on the field in front of you?
To a certain degree, yes. I think that at the end of the day, as a broadcaster, the goal is to humanize the players that you're broadcasting. You want them to appear exactly what they are as human beings. Yeah. I think a lot of times we lose sight of that because they're superhuman in their abilities on the field. So Marvin Harrison Jr. is a perfect example. Marvin Harrison Jr. has got a great backstory, obviously, with his father and how he learned under his tutelage and how to get to where he is now and where he could be a top 2 pick in the NFL draft this year. I think that that's worth telling and making sure that you encapsulate the kid. What outside of that can we find out about Marvin? Why is he the way that he is? Or was there a moment growing up that made him that way? Like, that's stuff that no matter who it is, if he's in the NFL or if he's in college, you're going to get. But then the other avenue in it is that they are college students and they're student athletes. And so, we just did that Penn State game, and the left tackle, Olu Fashanu, would have been a first-round pick last year. I think he was pretty much a guarantee a lot to be a first-round pick if he had left for the NFL. And he decided to come back, and we got to talk to him and ask him why he did. And his first thing was basically that his mom and grandma said to him, if you're going to start Penn State, you better leave there with a degree. And that was it. And so to have that side of the story, that's obviously not something you're always getting at the professional level. So there's a slight difference. But at the end of the day, the message remains the same. And that's making sure you get to the core of who each person is.
When it comes to Ohio State, getting to the core of who each person is I won't say easy, but there's a lot of avenues. I'm not trying to be like this is the only podcast. Numerous podcasts, numerous writers. Getting information can be easy because of who's right, how many avenues are there, but also you might want to fact check a couple things because some things can be lost in transition between one source to someone else to someone else. Oh, wait, we got that story wrong. How do you go about with this school team specifically? How do you go about trying to make sure every story that comes across on a broadcast is actually the right story?
Yeah, I mean, look, the SIDs are great with us for every team. And so if there's ever a question, if there's ever even a concern that maybe something isn't 100% accurate or doesn't line up perfectly correct, we'll generally ask them. Yeah. And they tend to give us a good answer, and they're very direct with us, and that's all we can ask for. But sometimes you have to take a risk at the same time. And if you read something and you feel like that's true, you want to check your sources. I was told when I was in college that you want 3 sources before you run with a story. So as long as you can see it in multiple places, generally it's right. And a lot of times if I see something on Twitter or I hear something on a podcast, I will go and do my own due diligence of at least Googling it and making sure I can find something else that confirms my suspicions. But you're not always going to be right. Sometimes you're going to be wrong. And if, by the way, you make the mistake of trusting something that's factually incorrect and you run with it, it's on you. It's not on the person that put it out initially. It's still on you. And so you have to eat it. I'm always willing to do that. I'm always willing to accept the responsibility. The key is you just don't want it to happen week in and week out. You got to make sure you limit it.
Guys, we got to hear a little bit about Marvin Harrison Jr. Just a snippet during this segment. What does Noah Eagle think about other Buckeye players in the football team this season after only game 1? We'll discuss it next on Locked On Buckeyes. Noah, I think one of the easiest storylines for the Buckeyes this year is Marvin Harrison Jr. Going into his 3rd year in college, he is a guy that at receiver, some say he can win the Heisman Trophy. I don't want to go that far right now, but what are your thoughts initially about this young man entering his 3rd year as a Buckeye?
There's not much that I need to say that hasn't already been said about Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think that's what's extra special to me about the kid is just how hyped he's been. Not just this year, but obviously last year and what he did last year. But that's exactly it. It doesn't seem like it phases him. And I can just speak to it from going into the same field as my dad. He had been a high-level broadcaster for many, many, many years before I ever decided I wanted to do it. And for me, just getting to see it every day, there's value to it for sure, to see how he works, to see how he prepares, to see how he plans his days every time he wakes up and has a game that week or something. It wasn't even like he sat me down and said, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. It was osmosis where I just watched him do it and said, okay, I have a sense of exactly what I need to do. And I think for Marvin, just having his dad as a Hall of Fame wide receiver himself from a great university, by the way, just an upstanding university.
Yeah, I was waiting for
it. Yeah, I think that having him just as a good viewpoint of what it looks like to have success at the position. Again, it wasn't even like you had to sit him down or anything, but more than anything else, how to deal with scrutiny, how to deal with being the guy. Marvin got to the league in Indy, and once him and Peyton Manning linked up, they were destined and they were looked at saying, hey, you need to win right now. And it took them a while before they finally got there. But there was a lot of pressure on Marvin Harrison to get it done, to help Peyton Manning get it done. And so I think for Marvin Jr. to be able to see that, to see the painstaking hours, to see how you handle the pressure, to see how you handle the media scrutiny, how you handle the fans, all of that stuff, I think that's what we're seeing more than anything else, because the ability is evident. I mean, the ability, there's no questioning. It's about how is his mental capacity, and I think he's passed that test with flying colors.
The Buckeyes are in the midst, still in week 2 of a quarterback battle. Kyle McCord got to start week 1. Devin Brown, I think, played 6 snaps in the first game of the season. And so a quarterback battle that, I was hoping it was done by now, because I've been talking about the quarterback battle at Ohio State all offseason. And I'm like, let's just get this thing done. I want to talk running backs and receivers. No, Ryan Day has not made an announcement about who the week 2 starter is going to be. Keep this in context. This is being recorded on a Monday. Ryan Day's presser's on Tuesday. So he made an announcement about Saturday's game in between you hearing this and this being recorded. But let's just say that there has been no starting quarterback. For you being a broadcaster, a play-by-play guy who's going to call the Notre Dame game against Ohio State, how does that factor you? Maybe let's say going into that week, there's still no starter named by Tuesday, by Wednesday. How does that impact your preparation for the game?
So we had that this past week to a certain degree. James Franklin didn't technically name a starting quarterback. We knew it was going to be Drew Aller. I think everybody knew it, although he had a great line when someone asked him about it during his coach's show this past week. Someone said, oh, you have something about naming the starter. And he goes, what's funny is that nobody's asked me to name the starting long snapper.
Right.
And here we are, and meanwhile, West Virginia, they didn't name a starting quarterback. We had a feeling it was going to be Garrett Green after the way he played at the end of last year, but Nico Marchiol was very much in the running as well. And so the curious thing that I had was, and Todd Blackledge was the one who brought this up, and he's totally right. So Michigan going into last season, it was the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Aiden McNamara had a fantastic season the year before, got them the Big Ten title, and there was no reason he was just going to get supplanted other than if he was beat out in a legitimate competition. But I don't think Jim Harbaugh wanted that to just happen overnight, right? He wanted it to be proven. And so in not just handing J.J. McCarthy the role, they had Cade start a game last year, and they had JJ start a game last year and play the whole game.
Yeah.
And then based on the performance, they chose JJ, and obviously that ended up being the right choice. And Cade, by the way, at Iowa already looked like he's getting more and more comfortable with Kirk and Brian Ferentz. And so that'll be interesting to watch. But in this case, I think McCord obviously had been there a little bit longer. So I'm not sure that Ryan Day just wanted to supplant him for no reason. And then you've got Brown, who clearly has talent and clearly was highly touted coming out of high school. I was curious, and I guess more so puzzled, why Ryan Day didn't go with that similar method. By the way, and to your point, because you've had to talk about this all offseason, Jay, but the fact that, and I know you're going to hit on it, I know everyone's going to mention, but the fact that no one is focused on how dominant the defense looked against Indiana, and instead it's focused on, wait, Kyle McCord didn't look great. Does that mean that Brown's going to have a chance to maybe take that spot now or this and that? To me, that's wrong. And that's why I think Ryan Day could have maybe come out, because he has no experience in this. He's had 2 tailor-made situations since he's taken over full-time as head coach with Justin Fields and CJ Stroud. And you're not going to just get rid of 2 Heisman candidates at your quarterback position. So to me, I think he's learning on the fly. But if I were him, I would have gotten out in front of it and said, hey, we're going to start each of them for a game. see how it goes. Because that way now nobody's saying, well, wait a second, what's going to happen now? What you know exactly what's going to happen. You can talk about the performance. That's one, but you can't talk about, okay, how many snaps is one going to get? How many snaps is the other guy going to get? So it'll be fascinating to watch. But for my preparation, it really is what it is. You just have to go into the meetings and hope that they give you a little clarity.
That defense you mentioned, I'm in the midst of my rewatch right now of Saturday's game. I'm almost towards the end of the first half, and that defense confirmed what I watched on Saturday in the rewatch. That defense was good. When you go into a game not expecting a triple option, or maybe you do, but not knowing what variation you're going to get of that triple option, and all of a sudden you're stopping it behind the line of scrimmage multiple times, I think that's a bigger story to me, as odd as this is going to sound, than the quarterback situation, because you can have a quarterback battle week 1, 2, and 3 based off how the defense played on Saturday.
1,000%, 1,000%. And I agree with you. I don't think that's a hot take. I don't think that's a wrong take. To me, the biggest storyline that came out of the game was that defense was dominant. Now, I know it's Indiana. I know it's not against a Michigan or a Penn State. I get that. But to your point, different offense than what you're going to see, which can be good and bad. And that the fact that it was week 1 helped them so that they had a little bit of an extra preparation, or at least just a forewarning, it felt like, to just give themselves a little bit of a cushion. But doing that Notre Dame Navy game, week 0, I learned a lot about having to defend the triple option, because that's what Navy runs. And the one thing that kept coming out, Al Golden, the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, kept saying that the footwork that is required and the discipline that is required for a triple option offense is completely different than any other defense you're going to play. And so to your point, the discipline that they played with on Saturday was incredible. And the togetherness that they played with on Saturday was absolutely astounding to watch. If their defense is going to be that good, they're going to be in games regardless, because they have talent on that side of the football, as they always will. But that's a big if. I know it was week 1, long season ahead. To me, as we mentioned, week 4 is the test. They need the quarterback to be guaranteed shored up by week 4, and they need the defense to stay in this level and stay in this mode, because the skill position players are going to do their thing.
Yeah.
All receivers, running backs, tight ends, they're covered. They're as covered and maybe better than any team in the country. And so they're going to be doing their jobs. So will the quarterback be solved, and will the defense be this dominant by the time they see Notre Dame on the road week 4?
Noah, last thing for you here. I wish we had more time, but we don't. When it comes to Ryan Day, some Ohio State fans love him. Some are ready to kick him out of Columbus. How do you, going into this season, for you in this role at NBC, but also going to be calling potentially multiple Buckeye games, how do you view Ryan Day?
I think it's a little unfair, that some of the criticism that he gets. I understand, if you're in Columbus, the expectation needs to be national championship every year. I get that. But you look at a lot of programs that lose top-tier head coaches. And for all those pitfalls, Urban Meyer was a top-tier college football coach for decades. Decades. Obviously, the national championships speak for themselves. I haven't watched Swamp Kings, but I'm sure that there's plenty of information chock full of it in there. But Urban Meyer got results. And Joshua Perry is on our pregame show, and he tells me all about what Urban did to help him and how he would help players develop and this and that. And it's legitimate. He was a high-level college football coach. And a lot of times when a school somewhat abruptly loses one like that, the pitfall and the downfall is real. And to me, the fact that Ryan Day, and I know that he assumed as talented a roster each year as anybody, but now has had to recruit for himself. It's not like they're Urban's guys anymore. The fact that they've been as good as they have been is a high mark. And to me, it's a good sign for the future. He's still early in his tenure. He's still relatively new as a head coach. And so give him a little bit of time. I mean, look, Jim Harbaugh has been there for longer than Ryan Day, right? And it took him X amount of years to finally get over a hump. And now he's trying to get over the next hump. Like, college football is hard. And with an extended playoff, I think that any team as good and as talented as Ohio State is likely going to be in there pretty much every year. And it's going to be competitive every year. Because, again, it's not like they've been blown out each year. Last year, they were one play away from going to the national championship game. And they had a fantastic roster that matched up with Georgia, which has had 2 all-time defenses. So to put up that amount of points on a Georgia defense that has had that much talent, I just think it's a little unfair to say, okay, this guy can't get the job done. I think you look back over the course of sports heroes, over the course of decades and centuries of sport, it just takes one time to feel that, to get to that point. Like Kirby Smart, it felt like wasn't going to get over the hump. And there were a lot of people in Georgia that said, all right, I don't know, is Kirby really the guy that's going to lead us to a national championship? And look what he's done the last 2 years. So I think you got to give him a little time. It just hasn't been enough time to say definitively that this guy can't get it done.
Correct. Noah, this has been a lot of fun. Maybe we can get you on the show down the road. You got a busy schedule, so if it happens, maybe yes. If not, I understand. But if you have any last comments about Ohio State or calling Big Ten games that you want to leave the people with?
Man, just how excited I am. I kept saying leading up to week 1 that I wasn't going to be able to put it into words until I got into that booth for Penn State, just how excited I am. And it exceeded all of the expectations. It was just so enjoyable for me and Todd and Catherine to call the game, and our guys in the truck to produce and direct it the way they did. And so I think we're just pumped to keep getting better each week, and keep getting more comfortable with our audience, and hopefully get some fantastic games. We certainly have some of the best teams in the country, and that's only going to increase next year. But for this season, I know getting to Columbus and Ann Arbor and Madison and doing football games there for the first time, that's bucket list material. Yeah. And so I'm just excited, and I hope everybody's can feel that, I guess, from us throughout the TV and throughout all our broadcasts this season.
Noah, just like the times when I've been able to interview your dad, it's been fun the entire time. And I look forward to doing it again down the road. Noah Eagle, the voice of the Big Ten on NBC. Thanks for coming on Locked on Buckeyes. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
I really hope you all enjoyed that conversation with Noah and having him on the show. The plan, and I hope we are able to have him on the show once again down the road. Maybe Notre Dame week, maybe Wisconsin week, maybe Michigan State week. Not saying it's definite, but it would be nice to have him back on the show to get his insight and thoughts on Buckeye football in the middle portion of the season. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. This has been Locked on Buckeyes here on a Wednesday. I'll see you next time.